Yeah, that's all right. It's all right. There are 3 seats here. They're not, as I say, they're not the naughty seats or anything like that. So. All right. Okay, let's get started. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your attendance here tonight for the October council meeting. Welcome to those that are on viewing us on YouTube. I think there was 131 views at from the last council meeting, which is quite a number. And there's an extraordinary number of people here this evening. So I'm sorry we had to put you out into the wings a little bit, but that's the best we can do. This is more than we would normally have at a council meeting. Just a couple of housekeeping rules. If you've got a mobile device or phone that goes ding or something, or a page or something, could you please just turn them off or onto silent? That would be appreciated. Thank you. Item 1, recording and live streaming of council meetings. Mr. Bird.
All council meetings are filmed with both video and audio being recorded. Audio is captured from the entire room and video is focused on the councillors and officers. However, in this case, I suspect there's a few of the gallery members that are located on this side, which will also be captured by the videoing as well. So if you're comfortable being captured by the video, please stay there. If not, please move back. By speaking during question time or at any time during the meeting, you consent to your voice and any comments you make being recorded. In common with all narrative during council meetings, verbal responses to congratulations, obituaries and questions on agenda items will not be recorded in the written minutes. The reason for recording council meetings is to hold us more accountable to our community by having as accurate as record of meetings as possible, and also to improve transparency on decision making for those that are unable to attend in person. The full meeting is being streamed live on Council's YouTube channel, Alpine Shire Council, and a recording will be available at the same location immediately after the meeting.
Thank you. Councillors, if you could stand please for the acknowledgement of traditional custodians.
The Alpine Shire Council acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we are now on. We also acknowledge those people who have contributed to the rich fabric of our community and strive to make wise decisions that will improve the quality of life for all.
Thank you. Item 3, confirmation of minutes. Item 3.1, ordinary council meeting M9, 10th of September. Councillor Nicholas.
Second.
Councillor Forsyth. Any discussion?
No.
All those in favour? Carried. Apologies, there are nil. We have a full complement this evening. Obituaries and congratulations. I'll just start, if I may, councillors. Just want to congratulate all those teams that were in the football finals last weekend and the weekend before. I think Councillor Pearce went to Wangaratta for to watch Bright, and I went to watch the Myrtleford crew down in Wodonga and Wangaratta. And my congratulations to the Myrtleford Thirds for winning the grand final, and all those teams that got into the finals through a great effort by all those young people. So well done to that sporting community.
Mr. Mayor, may I also add to the Brighton under-19s who
Sure.
were
Yeah.
also successful.
Yep. Absolutely. So. So was there any further from you, Councillor Pearce?
I've got one thing I want to put up, if that's okay, Mr. Mayor, and I'll just go through 313 and ordinary meeting in our local
We'll just stick to the obituaries and congratulations at this point.
not at all, so I'll come back to that.
Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a big thank you to all the staff that helped out and the students that helped out with the Youth Awards. They were on recently, showcasing the fantastic things that our youth do in our shire. So I just want to congratulate the winners and the people that were nominated, all the other and the helpers. Thanks.
Councillor Forsyth?
Yep.
Oh, Councillor Nicholas.
Ditto to Councillor Keeble. It was fabulous to see the young achievers up there getting their awards, and they also organised a really wonderful evening that was organised by a group of young people as well, with a very dynamic and inspirational speakers.
I think Councillor Pearce's granddaughter was on the guitar. Very good too.
And musicians.
And musician.
I also wanted to mention a couple of young girls. I did mention them last council meeting, India Fletcher-Jackson and Charlotte Kaling, for organising the School Strike for Climate in Bright, which was a fabulous event, fabulously attended, and hopefully bigger governments than ours will start taking notice and doing something about it.
Yeah. Councillor Roper?
No.
Councillor Knapstein?
Just a quick congratulations to the Bright Art Gallery for the Emily Rackerman concert, which was well attended, sold out, could have done two. Maybe we'll do that next time. Thank you.
Okay. Declarations by councillors of conflict of interest. Item 6. Nil. Yep. Councillor Pearce.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'm looking to put forward a motion, but I'll just remind from our local laws and council administration 313, no business may be conducted at an ordinary meeting of council unless it is business notice of which has been given either prior business notice which has been given either by inclusion in the agenda or any report accompanying the agenda, or in a notice of motion, provided that the council may resolve to admit without such notice an item considered to be urgent business, not being a matter which require that notice shall be given. What I'd like to, a motion that I'm trying to put forward is of urgent business, given the time factors that lies ahead before anything can take place with this thing. So,
just a moment, Councillor Pearce. You want to bring this forward before the other agenda items? Is that correct?
yes, I'd like to bring it to now.
Okay, councillors, are you happy for that to occur? Any dissent from that? None. Thank you. Continue.
Therefore I ask that an item of urgent business is allowed, and that is, I'd like to put forward a motion that allows the delegation of Bright business people, led by Jason Reid, to forward an additional management plan for the iconic Rod Run event, and this is to the CEO and the Risk Assessment Panel for consideration and assessment.
Seconded by Councillor Roper. Any dissent? All those in favour then? I take it that's no dissent. All those in favour. Thank you. Councillor Pearce, continue with
this is a motion that allows a delegation of Bright business people, again led by Jason Reid, the opportunity to forward an additional management plan for the Rod Run to the CEO and the Risk Assessment Panel for consideration and assessment.
Councillor Roper.
Yes, that is what I believe the motion is about, and I really don't think. I suppose the expediency in the process at this point in time is that you can get this up within 7 days, as you said. So the CEO can start working on convening the assessment panel.
Thank you. Comment, Councillor Keeble?
I'm just wondering if we can put that time frame on that motion, if it's next Wednesday.
Will we be ready by then?
I don't know. There's a lot of external.
Mr. Bird, there's a lot of work here for staff.
So the risk assessment panel is comprised of a number of external agencies as well as council. So I don't know whether they will be available in that time frame. I have to take that one on notice.
Councillor Keeble?
I guess my question was just really that for Jason and the group to have that risk assessment due, have it here by Wednesday, and however the council gets ready for that's fine.
I think it's fair that if Jason Reid and his delegation can have it up in 7 days, we've got to try our best at least to get it around 7 days. Is that fair enough, CEO?
That is fair enough, Councillor Pearce, and we will endeavour to the external number of external agencies to convene that panel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Councillor Forsyth?
Yes. Can you just have a look at that? In actual fact, the Bright Rod Run, iconic Bright Rod Run, the current problems that you guys all seem to face with the alcohol ban is to do with the application from the Bright Iconic Rod Run Committee. What Jason, Mr. Reid, has proposed tonight is a separate entity. It's a separate event. It's something to happen in the CBD. So from that point, I believe that, and I like the idea of where this is going, I think that this now has to be a new event application with its all the consequences, including your risk management plan and whatever. So if there is a confirmation with a nod that this can still happen within 7 days, then I think that the nod's there. So I believe that that should go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to
just a
drop
moment.
those words from the
What
from the
words are
motion.
those?
The Rod Run, we'll call it the delegation led by Jason Reid and the local business people, or whatever we write, something to those,
Just
to that.
can I just make sure?
There's a problem you have, Mr Mayor and
Yes.
Councillor Pearce, is that realistically we've got to put, unless you actually try and tie a date around it, so I don't know what the dates are because it's off the top of my head unless I look at the diary, it's on the weekend of, you know, the dates need to be inserted in there. Then you can get rid of the wording that Councillor Forsyth, because it is a separate thing realistically, because it's not under the auspices of the committee that are running that event. Then I think that's realistically, that gives us a date that it's that it's going to happen, and it gives some context around what it realistically is.
Thank you. Are you happy with that amendment, Councillor Pearce?
Yeah, no problems with that amendment.
The amendment is that the iconic Rod Run disappears, and it's for the weekend of that the iconic Rod Run is actually appearing, and unless I look at my calendar...
The 8th of Friday.
I wonder, if, Jason, if you're happy with to be called that. Is that okay, Mr. Mayor?
Let's get through this part for a second.
Let's get through this. I don't want to workshop
It can be
this off the
adjusted
floor.
later on, I think, anyway. Wouldn't that be right?
Sorry, Councillor Pearce.
Oh, well, it can be adjusted slightly, the wording.
The decision can't be adjusted later. This is the motion. We have to work on the motion as we have before us. And if we could read that, if someone could read that out for me, please.
My eyesight can't read that, so if we can increase the font, please.
Increase the font.
I could read it.
Councillor Nicholas will read it. There we go. That's better.
That council allows a delegation of Bright business people led by Jason Reid to submit an event application for an event to be held in the Bright CBD during the weekend of the Bright Iconic Rod Run. But do you want that as the dates?
Yeah, the dates.
Dates 8th to the 10th of November 2019 for evaluation by council with the risk management plan to be assessed by the risk assessment panel.
And I see look, realistically, that it is complementary to the Rod Run. So, so if we get during the weekend of the whatever dates it is in November 2019, an event which is complementary to the Bright Rod Run for evaluation by council with the risk management plan to be assessed by the risk assessment panel.
Thanks, Pete.
Well, it's not, what I'm trying to point out here is, or we're trying to put into words, is that this is something that's not being auspiced by the Rod Run Committee, that's actually been put up by another group in the community, it's in conjunction, or it's collaboration is the right term. It's complementary. It's complementary to the Rod Run, is what it is.
No, just a moment, please.
So the 8th, Friday's the 8th.
Yeah, the alcohol ban
And the 7th.
should be the 7th. Councillor Nicholas, I think you have a point here.
The current proposal of the alcohol ban covers actually the 7th to the 10th of November, so we should change the new management
date.
for that whole time, the date from the weekend. So the weekend 8 to 10 should be changed to 7 to 10, so it covers the current alcohol ban.
I think Mr. Jeremy has trouble doing two things at once.
Yes.
Don't we all?
He's an engineer, not a typist.
Thank you.
Councillor Nicholas.
Do you want me to read it again?
Yes, please. You can now. Yeah, that's good. Councillor Nicholas, could you read that out, please, so that we
Okay.
all know?
That council allows a delegation of bright business people led by Jason Reid to submit an event application for an event to be held in the Bright CBD during the weekend 7 to 10 November 2019 and complementary to the Bright Iconic Rod Run event.
Which is from November 2019, which is complementary to the Bright Iconic Rod Run event. Yep. For evaluation by council, with the risk management plan to be assessed by the risk assessment panel.
Let's get it organised.
Thank you.
It should be the period 7th to the 10th of November, not weekend.
Oh, period, yep. Right up. The more we peer review this, the better it will be.
That's it.
Makes sense?
Councillor Pearce, are you
I'm happy with all the changes.
happy with that those changes?
I'm happy with the changes and thank you for the assistance.
I'm done. I think the intent of what we're trying to do is there, and I think we should move to the vote, Mr. Mayor.
Seconded? Do you second it? Yes. Peter did.
Yep, Councillor Roper seconded the motion. And is there further comment?
Yep.
Yeah, go on. Councillor Nicholas.
I just wanted to say that I think that the people in the room and beyond have been heard and responded to. I think the complete alcohol ban is a blunt instrument, and I also think that it's great to see the input from the town shire that's framed as a solution. And I think that's sometimes we just get people having a good complaint and there's not much help to work out how to go forward, but this has been a process that's supported the forward movement.
Thank you. Councillors, sorry. You're right, Councillor Roper?
Oh no, we're just having a discussion about spelling. Well, there's two complementaries.
No,
There's
that's the right one.
There's the free one, and there's the one that adds value.
Yeah, and this is the one that adds value.
Correct.
Thank you.
They're complimenting Will on his.
Yes.
Thank you.
How is that Oxford education?
Thank you, councillors. We'll take it to the vote. All those in favour of that motion as you see before you? 1, 2, 3. Those against? 3 against.
I'll call a division on it just for the record.
That can always do, that's okay.
So 3, 4.
Division?
5-2.
Division.
Oh, well, division's new again.
4.
So
Division.
Put our hands up again.
Yep.
Division.
4.
4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So Councillor Pearce, Councillor Forsyth, Councillor Nicholas, Councillor Roper. 4. Those against? Councillor Keeble, Councillor Janus, Councillor Nicholas.
And may I explain to the gallery, Mr Mayor, that a division only means you've got to put your name to your vote.
I think people...
They're pretty smart.
Okay. Yep. All right, the motion is carried. That's it.
Democracy in action.
That's it.
Can I say one
Done.
more thing about it?
No, what?
No? Okay.
No,
Just it's got to go to the risk assessment. It says it up there.
it's got to go to the risk assessment panel, so that's fine. Item 7, public questions. I have one item from the floor. No, not sorry, from the floor, one written one. I've got it here. From Kate Farrell. What has happened to the organic bin survey? Are we as ratepayers able to access the results? Ms Cook, I think you have a reply to that.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Victorian Government's currently developing a circular economy policy, which also includes consideration of curbside collection services and is likely to impact the way councils are expected to now manage our curbside collections. This is expected to be announced in November. Therefore, we're anticipating being able to provide a recommendation to council that outlines both the results of the organic survey and a recommendation of the way forward after this is released. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. With no further written questions, Mr CEO? No. Take questions from the floor. Adam? So for those that are unaware, normally you would approach the dais there, state your name and address, and then the question. I will allow a short statement, because otherwise we won't really know what the background of the question is, and then the question. Thank you. Oh yes, yeah, press the button.
Okay. Kitty Vigo, representing the Upper Kiewa Valley Community Association. Do you need my address?
Oh no, sorry.
Thank you. Right, I just wondered, because I've never given that. You may be aware there's been some work, building being done in Toowoomba South near the present post office in that area, in front of the flats that were built further back. And the road's been blocked because of the pathway's been blocked or closed because of laying of new footpath, cementing. It's had to be done twice because of some issue. The question we want to have an answer to, if possible, who pays for that? Who's responsible if the work has to be replicated or replaced? Is it a council cost, or do the people who are doing the building pay that cost?
Thank you, Mr CEO. Mr Jeremy will answer.
Thank you, Mr Janis. In response to your question, that depends what caused the problem. In this case, this has been a particularly challenging section of footpath to lay. Strange as that sounds, we've had a number of problems. So the footpath is sandwiched between a number of other agencies' assets. So there are some water lines in there and up to the boundary of the property. So council's had some problems in the alignment of the footpath, and the contractor's had some challenges in his delivery of the works for council. So in response to your question, there's a shared responsibility, and the costs of removing and relaying that footpath will be shared proportional to essentially the responsibility for those problems that we've had with that project.
Right, thank you. And do you know how long that work will continue for? Much longer that footpath's going to be closed for?
So we're expecting the footpaths works to be carried out within the next fortnight. So we do apologise. We realise it's taken a long time to get this particular project delivered. It has been quite a challenging project, and I think reflecting on footpath delivery overall for us, it sounds like a very simple project to deliver, but there are lots of challenges with delivering new and renewal of existing footpaths because of all the services that you have to deal with that are alongside. So yeah, we do apologise. We realise this particular project has taken a long time to deliver.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms Vigo. Further questions from the floor? Sir?
Craig Scholl, 7 Churchill Avenue. I want someone to explain to me, please, on this downhill push bike situation, who the ACP is, where the money will go to, and when will it start happening and everything.
Thank you, Mr Scholl. Mr Bird, do we have an officer that can respond? Mr Jeremy?
So in terms of your first question is who's ACP? So ACP is an incorporated not-for-profit. So it's got a number of members on the board. So council has 2 representatives on the board of ACP, of which I'm one of them. The Chamber of Commerce, Bright Chamber of Commerce, had a representative. Cycle Club has a representative. The North East Victorian Hang Gliding Club has a representative as well. So there are 7, and HVP has 2 representatives. So they're intended to represent the parties who have an interest in activities in that hill. So that's the land manager, which is HVP, and other parties who have an interest. So the cyclists, the hang gliders, the businesses through the Chamber of Commerce. So that's an organisation that's been put in place. They're a separate organisation from council, so they have a board, they have a constitution. Importantly, the land up there, so it's not council's land. That is land that's managed through, so the Forestry Commission essentially responsible for the land, and that land is licensed to HVP. So HVP has got a licence to forest trails up there, and importantly, it's also seeing an impact on the amenity of the residents who live around there through dust. So the measures that ACP have announced, which is to start essentially charging to take vehicles into the park, are intended to address those issues. So the dust issue, the risk, the issue of having excessive number of vehicles in the park, and also to derive an income which they can use to maintain and develop the park further.
So the $130 will be going back into the park?
Yes, that's correct. So ACP is a not-for-profit. So any money that comes into ACP is spent on activities that are allowed under the Charter. So there's activities associated with operating a recreational facility within that park. So there's one salaried member of ACP, so we have an officer. Everyone else does it either voluntarily or through their role, either with HVP or council. So we have one officer that we pay who essentially runs the business for us, but there's no taking of profits by any private business.
So if I want to take friends up to Mystic Park, do I have to pay to get in?
So from beginning of November, if you want to take people riding a shuttle, so we'll have a limited number of shuttle passes available each day for you to be able to go into the park. So that's to manage the number of vehicles going to the park. And also Blue Dirt operate, as you're probably aware, on long weekends, busy weekends, public holidays. They operate a shuttle service up into the hill as well.
Thank you. Further questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Dee Headley, 30 Hawthorne Lane, Bright. Just to follow up on Craig's question then, because he did ask sort of the same question that I wanted to know. I'm not talking mountain bike people. I have a lot of friends that I've lived here all my life, over 60 years, and I have taken a lot of people up to that Mystic Mountain in those 60 years. Taking people up without mountain bikes or paragliding or anything else, am I still going to have to pay to take people up to either Huggins Lookout, because it's not only Mystic, it's Huggins as well, to show them our beautiful valleys and where we live?
Thank you, Mr.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So one of ACP's key concerns is risk in the park. And the reason they've got this concern is because of the very large increase in the number of vehicles that we've got on that road up there. So ACP's aim is not to prevent people going up there, people going up there to look from the viewpoint, people going up to Huggins or up to the Mystic Launch. Their primary concern is to manage risk, so to reduce the number of vehicles on busy days. So ACP's recognise that there are other people other than cyclists, paragliders, hang gliders who use the park, and ACP will be putting in measures to allow people to access without having to pay that $130.
So that's a no.
A no to
A no to me having to pay to go up there. If I'm just going up there one night after work, I go up there and sit up there with my dog and watch things. That's what I'm saying, is it?
So it's a qualified no. So ACP's intent is to manage risk. So at very busy times when we've got very high usage of the park, it's possible that there will be restrictions on all users of the park to try and manage that risk, but certainly going up there in the evening when it's quiet, my expectation through ACP is that they'll find a means to allow that activity to continue without paying.
Okay.
So there's a detail that's being worked through. I guess I'm being a little bit vague, but we recognise that there are other users. The primary concern is driven by the downhill cycling market, which has grown exponentially over the last couple of years. So it's really managing the risk with people shuttling up and down repeatedly during the day, which is causing the problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Headley. Another question? Someone else? Mr. Reid?
Jason Reid, 330 Back Germantown Road, Bright. given the announcement of staying on the hill situation, would council consider reassessing the opportunity for a gondola given the rise in tourism and numbers, etc., in our area?
Mr. Bird.
Answer. That's rude, wasn't it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have the gondola in our project pipeline. I believe it's got a indicative implementation timeframe of beyond 2033. I believe. So my understanding is there's a number of other constraints beyond that relate to the land itself and the ability to construct a gondola and use operate a gondola on that HVP managed land.
Yep.
And I understand you've had discussions with HVP, and I've heard nothing beyond
I
that.
have, but I think if the planning authority, being the Alpine Shire, could assist in this process, a lot of those issues may be resolved.
So I'm happy to discuss this after this meeting, but last time we spoke about this would have been, 9 months ago.
Correct.
And you were having some discussions. I heard nothing since, so I assume there was nothing happening, but more than happy to discuss.
I think given the announcement that the fact that, one of our biggest economic drivers being push bikes up and down the hill is now going to be stuck with a $132 access fee, it would be up the hill.
Happy to have the conversation after the meeting.
No worries, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Knapstein.
I've just got a quick question on that one. The feasibility study that was done for the gondola up Mystic,
Yep.
that previous one which also polarised the community because it was taken to Apex, does that still exist, and is your idea aligned with that feasibility study that initially had the gondola up there?
Councillor Knapstein, yes, that's right. In fact, there's been another feasibility study undertaken by a group of local business owners who have met regularly for probably the last 3 years in order to adopt a gondola on that hill only. If it's not adopted on that hill, and maybe for the rest of the crowd I could explain that fell over simply because the people doing the feasibility study announced that they preferred to have the hill to the left of us as the preferred hill because the Great Alpine Road had just become into play and more people on the Great Alpine Road would see the gondola, so there'd be a much more commercial benefit. Given the numbers and the rise in tourism that we've been quoted of recent times, I don't think the Great Alpine Road's a factor anymore anyway. Given the ACP, culmination, and given the issues we have with risk, I think it just makes a bit of sense.
It was a brilliant proposal to have it up Mystic at the time.
It's all ready to go, priced, the whole lot.
Okay, that was my curiosity. Thanks.
Good, thank you. Okay. Any further questions from the floor? Yes, sir.
Thanks. Mark Trahere from 71 Feathertop Track in Harrieville. Just on the biking, has there been consideration for a locals pass or off-peak prices for the locals, for the younger kids to get up? Because it seems to be there's a concentration on the tourists and the volume. I ride up there quite a bit, and during the course of the week or in non-peak times, it's not that busy.
Go ahead.
One key thing to point out is a comment that you made there, which is very true. The majority of people ride into the park, so they're not affected at all by the proposal. So people can ride in, they can walk in. The only thing that this proposal affects at this stage is driving your vehicles in. So in terms of your question, the communications that were put out last week were the first part of the communications. There's further information to come, and there's been a recognition that there's a need to, I guess, acknowledge the local riders, so the people who built the park, the people who work for the clubs, who are members of the clubs, and also the junior riders. And I know that the club's got a number of different proposals, one of which is free shuttling by Blue Dirt for kids on a particular day of the week. So there's a number of things that are going to be announced which will address some of the concerns people have been talking about, which is essentially the local clubs have put the work in to develop a lot of the trails, and now they're being essentially denied or charged to access those trails.
Yeah, okay. And was that communicated in the announcement last week?
So that was the first phase of the communications. That information hasn't been released yet, but that'll come out in the second phase of the communication to address some of the queries people have put out. So this is stuff we're working on, largely with the cycling club in Bright, the Alpine Cycling Club, just to work out those finer details of how do we not disadvantage local people. So other proposals are, there's a lot of maintenance work that the club members carry out, so free shuttling, a means for members who carry out maintenance work for the clubs to get free access to the park to do shuttling, things like that. So there's a number of alternative pieces of information which will address some of the concerns people have flagged.
Okay, thanks. Just a comment. I think there could have been a lot more communication in that first announcement that would have really helped in the communication within the biking community, because I think at the moment there's a lot of unrest. I've had 15 conversations myself in different parts of this area, and it's upset a lot of people, and I think all it needed was a bit more communication and articulation around why, who and when.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, and thank you for that feedback.
No worries.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think there was another one somewhere that had a question, was there? No? Oh, there is one. Yeah, thanks, sir.
Wayne Phillips, 452 Maursels Creek Road. A lot of what's been predicated tonight is all about risk. I'm under the understanding as well, part of the alcohol ban that was introduced through the risk assessment team, a great concern of theirs was crowd management when events like this were being held in the centre of town. I've performed a number of risk assessments in regards to events in the centre of town. And something that was identified way back in 2006 and 2007 by O'Brien's traffic consultants in Melbourne, which was engaged by a community group in Bright, and also a traffic management group that was commissioned by council back in those days, identified the need for clear pedestrian right-of-ways across our streets, particularly Gavin Street, particularly Island Street, Anderson Street and the top of Barnard Street. They were 4 locations that were identified probably 14, 15 years ago now. Now Bright lends itself to being an entertainment centre. Town centre is an entertainment centre. It's a retail precinct. We have markets in there which are retail. We have exhibition events, car events in the centre of town. I'm very much opposed to seeing these events being moved down to Pioneer Park. They clash with many other events down there, particularly Easter Saturday and the football club. I believe Pioneer Park is there for sporting, bicycling and adventure sports. And to further congest that area would be a detriment to the business community of Bright, and probably to many residents as well. We only close our town down for 5 days of the week, 5 days of the year. It's not a major inconvenience. If council were concerned about the risk and continuing these events in the centre of town, which make us absolutely unique, we don't want to be like other towns, we don't like being compared to other towns. We like to pride ourselves on our point of difference, both in business and the way we present ourselves. And it's imperative that these events continue in town, particularly our market stalls, and particularly our car and exhibition events. I believe it's incumbent on the council to keep the space in Pioneer Park, because it's just the adventure sports, the bicycling is burgeoning, and you will need that space in the next 20 years to accommodate the growth in these industries. So, going back to these traffic reports, I'd like to ask council, when are we going to slow the traffic down in the town, and when are we going to put pedestrian right-of-ways in? Something that's been asked for year upon year upon year. And if it's all about risk assessment and trying to avoid crowd convergence, which is a major problem, I will agree. These pedestrian rights formalise pedestrian movement in town and make it a hell of a lot safer to move around. So, as part of the risk assessment that this group is about to undertake, I also think it's incumbent on council to assist in some of these physical and infrastructure things that have been required for quite some time. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Mr. Jeremy can comment on some of that commentary, Mr. Phillips. That's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. This year, in our capital works programme, we've got the implementation of 5 pedestrian refuges in Gavin Street, which will address some of the concerns that you've flagged. Gavin Street's been quite challenging because, as you're probably aware, it's a Vic Roads road, so we've had to liaise with Vic Roads, and they present restrictions on what we can actually do on the road. So we've pushed the envelope as hard as we can to get some safer pedestrian crossings. So there'll be 5 crossings going in within Gavin Street this year. What we'll also be doing this year, we'll be engaging broadly with the community in Bright and in Myrtleford around a proposal to have a 40km/h zone within the CBD. So we'll be going out this year. So we've recognised both of those points that you've flagged there have been brought to the table, and we've taken them through the Traffic Liaison Committee meeting, which is where we liaise with Vic Roads and Vic Pol to discuss these issues. So they'll be going out to the community this year.
I would encourage the 40km thing. I'm for that. I'm very much for that. But as well as Gavin Street, which I know understand in your present plan is the focus.
Yeah.
One could be formalised on Island Street quite easily outside of the IGA with a raised embankment and a pedestrian right-of-way. Likewise at the top of Barnard Street. That is a very easy proposition. These were all recommendations going back to 2007 by O'Brien's, and obviously one around the middle of Island Street. It will greatly enhance the connectivity of people as well, and the on Anderson Street. So I can only encourage you to do that as quickly as possible in light of our urgency in regards to risk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Right. Any more questions from the floor? None? Okay, we'll move on with the council meeting. Thanks, Mr. Phillips.
Sounds like the Shire of Bright this evening, Mr Mayor.
No.
We had Mount Beauty.
One Mount Beauty question, the rest about Bright.
Well, that's lovely that they're participating. Normally we just have Mount Beauty. And someone from Bright, someone from Myrtleford. Ovens. Present item 8.1, Chief Executive Officer Mr Bird, 8.1.1, contracts approved by the CEO.
Moved. Second.
Yeah, Councillor Forsyth, thank you, and Councillor Nicholas. Any discussion? Any dissent?
Just a couple of little questions, Mr Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Pearce.
Just on, it's interesting to note there that it's the tender is Indigo Shire Council. It's a brief explanation of how that works and how many metres of stones. So I can divide 86,000 by that.
Mr Jeremy, do you have a reply to that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Pearce. So Indigo Shire Council operate a quarry called Horseshoe Quarry. So that's essentially we tender out to the market, and they've submitted a quote through our process, which has proved the most competitive. And in considering that quote, we consider the quality of the rock. We also consider the cartage distance, which is a key cost in getting rock from where it's sourced to where it's needed. So they came out, the preferred supplier through that process. I would have to take on notice the total tonnage. I'll take it on notice.
I look forward to the notice. And thank you, and I think it's a good idea, as we do work with our neighbouring councils.
No further comment. Take to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. 8.2.1, supply and delivery of a steel drum roller. Mr Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report relates to the award of a contract for the supply and delivery of a 12.5 tonne steel drum roller. So Council currently operates a steel drum roller which is used for routine maintenance of roads, and it supports the annual gravel resheet programme. We've seen an increased frequency of breakdowns, and the maintenance costs have been increasing over the recent years, and it's also become challenging to source some of the replacement parts for this machine, which is manufactured in China. So replacement of the machine is recommended while the trade-in value is still good. We've gone through the local government procurement service, which is provided by the Municipal Association of Victoria. We received 3 conforming, 1 non-conforming quotes.
Sorry, Mr Jeremy. I'll just interrupt for a second. If you would like to leave, and you don't want to stay for the rest of the council meeting, you're more than welcome to make your way to the door. You won't offend us. But if you'd like to leave, perhaps if we sort of just drifting out, we make an ordered departure.
That's fine. Mr Jeremy, clearly they think that a steel drum roller is not really exciting. This is very exciting stuff in council.
Yeah, you haven't got any good bit yet.
We haven't got to the annual report yet.
With that platypus, we're not going to race into the business. Looks like basketball things. That's what's wrong.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Jeremy.
Sorry, Mr. Jeremy,
Jeremy,
please.
you want to continue? Yes, thank you.
So we received 3 conforming, 1 not conforming tender through our tender process. What's of note is that we've recently introduced a new criteria into our assessment process, which is in environmental criteria, so there's a stronger focus on the environment through our procurement processes. The reason it's interesting in this case is because the non-conforming quote is for a model which isn't currently for sale in Australia. It's just a demo model here.
We'll
but
be the
it has-
first to have one in Australia, you're saying?
Yes, so it has a very much lower, a much more stringent emissions standard than the models which are currently for sale in Australia. So we, through our process, we've essentially given some weighting to the fact that we get a better emissions out of the machine, and combined with a consideration of cost and the supplier details and the performance, this has come out as the leading tender.
So moved.
Councillor Keeble and Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Keeble?
Sounds like
Comment?
a great buy. Thanks, Will.
Councillor Nicholas?
Nothing else to add. Thank you.
Further comments?
Just one.
Councillor Forsyth?
I understand that we're doing a trade-in. Are we trading it in, or are we just selling one? Selling the old one?
We're doing a trade-in, so it's the same supplier as purchasing our old roller off us.
So this is coming from overseas? The roller?
So the roller we're purchasing is in Australia as a demo model,
Right.
out of the European market at the moment. So it's got 9 hours on the clock. That's why it's a non-conforming tender, because we
Said brand new.
essentially requested a new machine. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment? Councillor Keeble? No. All those in favour? Carried. Item 8.3.1, Alpine Shire Council Annual Report. Ms Cook?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present Council's 2018-19 annual report for consideration by Council. Council's 2018-19 annual report has been prepared in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Act 1989. The section of the report provides, the performance report section of the report provides an overview of progress and the strategic themes which are outlined in the 2017-21 Council Plan. This is the second year of reporting against the Council Plan. As you will see in the report, we outline a number of achievements. It is worth highlighting that in 2018-19 we exceeded the delivery of our adopted capital works program by delivering on our commitments while also securing additional funding to deliver more outcomes. So we delivered $13.4 million of expenditure versus our $11.8 million of budget in that capital works program for the year.
So moved.
Second.
Councillor Keeble and Councillor Forsyth. Councillor Keeble?
Thank you. I think that's a terrific effort. I know that Council has been working in overdrive to get a lot of these programs up and running for the capital works, and it certainly exceeded the 11 million that we thought we'd do, so 13 million. And I note that next year is a fairly big year as well. So thanks to the teams for getting all that work done, because it's hard to actually spend that money time. So well done. Some great projects out there.
Yeah, just a minute. Councillor Forsyth?
Yeah, this report is so good it reads like a Mills and Boon. It's fantastic. No, I think it's all positive, everything that's happened, and the way in which you've actually explained the deficits, I think, works well. So anybody who wants to have a read, I think it's worthwhile reading.
Councillor Pearce?
Mr Mayor, I'll just 831 rather than 931.
The report number.
It's 831.
It went up at the borders as 931.
Councillor Pearce, the numbering change when we brought your item, the item you raised earlier.
Okay.
That's changed numbering what you see on the screen to what's in the paper.
My fault.
Yeah, no. Just good pick up, Councillor Pearce.
My turn?
Yes,
Yes.
Councillor Nicholas. Thank you.
I just wanted to pick up a little bit more from what Councillor Keeble was saying. The capacity to deliver extra capital works over budget is not just because we've got a really high-performing team, but it's because we're a high-performing organisation all over, and we have a really good reputation for both delivery and purpose of our projects, so we get funding. And that's a really great credit for the organisation.
Any further comment? Councillor. Mr. Bird?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify the reason we could deliver more of the capital works was through to the opportunistic funding that we received throughout the year, and a large proportion that was from Regional Roads Victoria.
Oh, I've got one question. And it's a question about Bright, because we are the Council of Bright. Shire of Bright. The 3.74 spent on the $3.74 million Australian spent on the Alpine Events Park, Bright. How far over budget was that?
Mr. Jeremy, going to answer.
I'd have to take the exact figure on notice. However, your approximate figure, it's somewhere around the $500,000, 500,000, and the largest driver of that was the need to rebuild the lower level of the change rooms, the lower level change rooms on the pavilion.
Right, and that was probably the purpose of my question about that is that we have to make sure we do everything properly and not repeat the mistakes of the past, which this building represents realistically.
Thank you. Any Councillor Keeble?
I just wonder how many pedestrian crossings we could build in Island Street for 500,000.
$500,000.
You don't need to answer that. It's okay.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. The budget for the 5 crossings we're putting in is 215,000.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any? Councillors, if there's no further discussion, Councillor Keeble, you have a right to respond. Nothing. We'll take it to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried. Thank you. Well, it's 9.3.2. Now, Audit Committee meeting, 10th of September 2019. That's Ms Cook as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present the minutes and recommendations of the Audit Committee meeting, which was held on the 10th of September. The purpose of that meeting was to consider the annual financial report and the annual performance statements prior to them being adopted, and also to consider the VARGO closing report for our year and our VARGO final management letter, which all form part of the process of us auditing our financial statements and our annual performance report.
Thank you. Move in a second.
So moved.
Second.
There was Councillor Keeble and Councillor Forsyth. Is there any commentary?
No questions for me.
Straightforward.
Straightforward. Thank you. Take straight to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. Ooh. 9.3.3, revocation of best value policy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Pity those people didn't stay.
Council's in the process of undertaking a holistic review of its policies. The best value policy was originally developed in the year 2000 to demonstrate in a report on how Council gives best effect to the best value principles which were outlined in the Local Government Act. We are recommending that Council revoke the best value policy that was adopted in 2000, and the reason for this is outlined in the report, but the best value principles are embedded into Council's ordinary business. We no longer require a standalone policy to manage them.
Moved.
Councillor Nicholas and Councillor Keeble. Is there any commentary on that? No?
Oh, yes, I'll direct you towards pages 17 and 18, in the internal of the document, where Ms Cook informs me there's a very good diagram showing why we can revoke this policy. Congratulations on your team.
Thank you.
It's work.
Yep. All those in favour? No, we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Yep. Carried. Uh, 8.3.4 annual review of the domestic animal management plan. Ms Cook again.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In 2018-19, Council adopted a domestic animal management plan. The purpose of this report is for Council to note changes that have been made from an annual review of that plan. The changes that have been made have been relatively minor. It removed some references to the old local laws because, as most people here would be aware, we now have a new local law, being a community local law 2019. We updated actions to note what had been completed in the ongoing action plan for that plan. We updated the skills staff matrix due to the appointment of a new ranger to Council and a different skill set being in that role. And we just updated minor text updates and edited for clarity of that document. The full document will be available on our website once it's reviewed and adopted.
Councillor Pearce and Councillor Knapstein. Any commentary?
I think it looks like it's fixed and it's pretty straightforward after that.
Councillor Nicholas, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that the plan actually has some actions in it, and I think that increasingly domestic animals will be better managed throughout the Shire as a consequence of those actions.
Sorry, Councillor Knapstein, I missed you as a seconder. My apologies.
That's all right. Particularly cats.
Was that call for comment at the to my left? No. Oh, sorry. Yes, I don't know how they'll spell that, but anyway. All those in favour? It's carried. 9.3.5 now, fraud and corruption control policy. Ms Cook.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present to Council the 2019 review of the fraud and corruption control policy. The content has been reviewed for compliance with relevant legislation and has been benchmarked against other local government fraud and corruption control policies. The review did not result in any change to the intent of the policy. That is, that Council is committed to the prevention, mitigation, deterrence, detection and investigations of all forms of fraud and corruption. The new policy is in the agenda minutes for your review.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholas. I think it was Councillor Knapstein. Seconded. Councillor Nicholas.
I guess there's not really any need to say it, but I'm going to anyway. Fraud and corruption are absolutely not appropriate in any place, and it's fabulous that we've got a policy that we can follow. And then but what I really wanted to pull out is that progressively we've been going through all our policies and making sure that they all conform to legislation, particularly as legislation changes, and I think that's a really fabulous piece of work and probably long overdue. So thank you again to all those staff.
Councillor Knapstein.
I think Councillor Nicholas has covered that.
Thank you. Any further comment? None. Take to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. I'll just mention on that our recent VAGO report was an excellent result and it was a very high level, very high marked result on that from the Auditor General's office, and it goes well with keeping our policies and procedures up to date, so that we don't come under unnecessary comment from outside agencies that are looking over our shoulder. So we've performed extremely well. Item 8.3.6, planning application, use and development of land for clay extraction. Ms Cook again.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This relates to planning application 5/2019-33-1, being the use and development of land for clay extraction. Alpine Shire Council is the applicant in this case, which is unusual, and it is proposing to source suitable clay to be used as capping material for its former landfill sites, being in order to meet Environmental Protection Agency remediation requirements. The application was advertised in accordance with Section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987. Notice of the application was sent to 33 surrounding landholders and occupiers. The surrounding landowners in this instance also included the land parcel along the haulage route up to the intersection with the Buffalo River Road. 3 objections were received. A planning forum was held to discuss the application on the 22nd of August 2019. All 3 objectors participated in the meeting along with 2 councillors and council officers. Following this meeting, a draft planning permit was circulated to all of the parties. This communication resulted in 2 objectors being comfortable with the proposal and 1 objection being formally withdrawn in writing.
So moved.
Councillor Nicholas. Councillor Forsyth. Councillor Nicholas.
More about that, we've actually found some clay to finish that capping. We've been looking for a while, so it's great that we've found it, and it's great that we've been able to work with the surrounding landholders to at least mitigate their concerns to the extent that they're comfortable to move forward, so that's good.
Councillor Forsyth.
Yeah, 2 questions. Why would Myrtleford Gravel Proprietary Limited not stick in the planning application?
Because the work will be undertaken by council, my understanding is that council is the applicant for the purposes of the planning permit.
Okay. Second question is the 10,000 metres, is it?
Cubic metres.
That's being removed. Does that give us a stockpile as well, or is it only for a specific job?
My understanding is that the clay is being sourced for the work that needs to be undertaken on both Paul Punker and Myrtleford landfill sites for that remediation that's required. However, saying that, I'm speaking as a planning authority. I'm not the applicant for the actual permit itself. Does that make sense?
Okay.
I think Mr. Jeremy is also able to
Going to say
assist you there,
something.
Councillor Forsyth.
If I could just provide a clarification. So the clay that's being sourced from this quarry is for the Paul Punker works only. So we still have a rehabilitation job in Myrtleford to complete. We don't have an approved rehabilitation design yet for Myrtleford. So we will.
enough to finish?
So the amount of clay that we're sourcing here is insufficient to complete both Myrtleford and Paul Punker. This will allow us to complete the rehabilitation of the Paul Punker landfill, which is the more urgent of the 2. So we're part way through an agreed timeframe for completing Paul Punker. Myrtleford, we still haven't. We're in the process of getting a design approved by the EPA for Myrtleford, so we don't know exactly what the final design is going to look like for Myrtleford yet.
So no idea on how much clay you may need?
We have an indication, but it's not. The design hasn't been finalised yet.
Right, and do you have another source of clay?
We don't have another confirmed source of clay yet for Myrtleford.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keeble.
The Myrtleford one, is there a time frame on that from the EPA when it has to be capped, Will?
They haven't received the permit.
We haven't yet received the formal trigger from the EPA that requires us to commit to a time frame, so the answer's no to that for Myrtleford.
Thank you. Any further commentary? No. Councillor Nicholas, nothing
No,
further?
nothing,
Okay, all those in favour? It's carried. I note that there are something like 25 conditions attached to that. And there's 25 there.
10.
Yeah, item 10. I also note on that last application that we have are extending the sealed surface of roadway past one of the, we'll call them objectors in this matter, to assist with dust.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. So we were successful in securing funding from Regional Roads Victoria, which has enabled us to deliver that project.
Yeah, that'll assist those people in that area. I'm very familiar with that piece of land. Item 10, Assembly of Councillors. Was that Councillor Forsyth and Keeble? Oh, Pearce, was it? Pearce. Any discussion? Those in favour? Carried. Item 11.
Yeah, no, it's 11.
It's 11. General business from my right, Councillor Knapstein. Councillor Roper.
I reserve my right.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholas.
Yep, I'd note that there's been another platypus death on Morses Creek near Ovens, near the Ovens River from elastic bands, or rubber bands it was called. And I was just wondering if Council could pursue the Platypus Conservancy that contacted us in June, I believe, after the first death. and follow that up, try and educate a bit better.
Yeah, Councillor, Mr. Bird.
Yeah, that's terrible news,
Yep.
Councillor Nicholas. I've had a look I've actually seen the action plan put forward by the Conservancy. We have been in conversation with NECMA prior to this second event or second injury that we're aware of, and I've subsequently followed up with them I think it's a great opportunity for us to work collaboratively with the CMA and to educate and raise awareness about litter and the impacts it has on the wildlife in the waterways.
Thank you. Councillor Forsyth?
No, nothing.
Councillor Keeble?
No, thanks.
Thank you. Mr Mayor, I've got two.
Oh, sorry, Tone.
That's right, no worries. In Mount Beauty, the Pebble Beach Walk, I raised it last week or the week before, I think. So I'm going to raise it in general business. The Pebble Beach Walk has some plantings of trees going there, which is fantastic. There's some fencing and some picnic tables and some couple of stairs. The question has been raised by some of the residents over there in regards to those trees to have them protected, because when people go to Pebble Beach they kind of park everywhere. There's no real parking spot and some people drive on the actual footpath, and I'm just wondering whether down the track we can look at getting some sort of fencing in that area and formalising that car park and protecting those trees. They've just been planted so they can grow.
Mr. Jeremy?
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. So we received your question last week. Our team's currently investigating. I don't have an answer for you at the moment, but I'll get back to you on that one. What's also worth noting is we do have within our project pipeline establishing car parking at the start of the Pebble Beach Walk, so recognition that that's becoming a busier area with the Pebble Beach footpath extension and the works that have been done around the swimming hole there.
Thank you, that's great. And also a few residents have raised the lovely buildings as you enter Mount Beauty, so they're still in Toowoomba South. On the left there's the auditorium and the servo and the hardware. Those buildings, having them used for artwork with murals, and I note that we've got some two representatives from the Upper Kiewa Valley, and I think that could be a good project for that group. There are some residents. The owner needs to be contacted, and then to have some sort of communication with the Shire as well to see where we can go with that as a project.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce?
No general business. No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I have no general business. Item 12. Oh, Mr. Councillor Rope, are you still considering?
No, I'm not.
We're all waiting.
No.
We're all waiting with
Move on.
bated breath.
Bated breath.
Item 12, motions for which notice have previously been given. There are nil. Item 13, reception and reading of petitions. There are nil. And item 14, documents for sealing. Councillor Pearce
No, second.
and Councillor Nicholas. Thank you. Any discussion there? Did you?
No, she's quiet.
I'm just too quiet.
Oh, that's all right. You didn't bring your biro tonight. All those in favour? Yes. Carried.
808.
Being no further business, I declare the meeting closed at 8:08 p.m. Thank you to the public who we had a lot here tonight. I hope it wasn't too uncomfortable for those that were here, but you know, unless we build a bigger office, which I don't think we really need. Yeah, declare the meeting closed. Safe driving home, and thank you for your attendance this evening.
Coming, staying.